We're so excited to have you as part of our community. Feel
Hello, hello. All right, welcome to our final presentation. We are a student pitch team. We are Envision, and we will be delivering you environmental art design in Unreal Engine 5 and VR. So let me introduce my teammates. I'm Shan. I'm the producer and programmer. Standing beside me are Dian, Ling, Echo, Joy, who are our environmental artists, and we have Pen Pen joining us from the School of Drama for our sound design. All right, so I want to reiterate our goals first. First of all, we want to create realistic environment art in Unreal Engine, and we want to incorporate 2D live action footage inside the 3D scenes. And we also want to experiment with visual and audio indirect control. So here are some of the metrics for success. One of them is definitely art style, prototyping, and then playtesting. For the above 6 aspects that I've just mentioned, we will be explaining them in detail in the latter half of the presentation. I also want to bring your attention to our higher concept, which is that we are using environment art to tell the story of a dystopian society where the privacy is a luxury only few can afford. So I want to bring your attention to some of the keywords. One is dystopian society, privacy. In our case, we will be focusing on the surveillance in our project.
We're so excited to have you as part of our community. Feel free to check out the rest of the building whenever you are ready.
So this will be a 40-second demo of our game. However, the whole experience will take about 5 to 10 minutes.
And we also have these 2 wavy rings. Drink without worry. Brought to you by Envision Healthcare.
All right, so that was a very brief overview of our project, and I'll leave the mic to the rest of my teammates to talk about each space that you just saw.
Thanks, Shan. Now I'm gonna talk about the environment art. So the first room is the guest room. The setting is that the guest has just moved into this room with studio layout, and it includes a range of visual elements that contribute to the cyberpunk aesthetic, with like neon lines, wells and pipes, and a cluttered living feel. You can see some subtle details show that the condition of this room is low class, with peeling paint, dirty stands, and some cracks on the wall. And to emphasize the high concept of surveillance, there is a camera hung on the wall, which indicates that the entire room is under observation. It also leaves a foreshadowing for the rest story. Let's move on to the indirect control part. So you can see from the picture that there are some moving boxes on the ground in the center of the room, so it allows the guests to move along the route from the start point to the table, and the monitor on the table will play welcome messages from the apartment manager. And there is also a bright lamp to highlight it, making it easy for guests to be visually and audibly attracted. After you watch the first monitor, there is a second one will attract you, and also you will be attracted towards the door and go outside to see the cyberpunk exterior and the vista. Now I'm gonna pass it to Lynn.
Thank you. So room 1 is designed to be the streamer's room, where the audience will see and hear a female influencer showing her jewelry and outfit to the camera. So we started building the room from a gray box and continued with modeling, texture, and lighting to achieve the environment visuals that we want to present to our audience. So we want to create a room of a character who is streaming all day long to advertise her jewelry product for a living. In our design, we want to make sure that the idea of advertising is easy to be noticed. So we mix the apartment window with the shopping window to give the idea of selling product. The influencer herself could also be seen as one of the products in the window to be watched by the audience. And in order to make her the visual focus of this room, we're using the two curtains on the side and spotlight to create a stage-like foreground, cropping the audience view to the center. And with the animated videos and the lighting contrast in the room, we're using several visual compositions to guide the audience attention. And here are some close-up details, like the jewelry display by the window, and the dressing table and monitors in front of the character, showing the streaming footage and the audience reactions. And behind her and the camera, the rest of the room will look messy and unkept, scattered with like lunch boxes, trash bags, wine bottles. In our story design, we want the streamer to represent the same facade of the society. And here is how we implement Laura's green screen footage to the 3D scene. We adjusted and keyed the footage to separate the layers and use some lighting techniques to fit the character into the environment. And we also add shadows on the ground to make it more realistic. And in order to avoid seeing the 2D footage from this side, which looks really flat, we limited the audience view to, by blocking the windows by more curtains. And now I'll invite Echo to talk about the ePad shop.
Thanks. So I'm going to talk about the environmental design and setup of the ePad shop. So the ePad shop is a place where we want to inspire our guests' thinking by giving them hints that make them reflect on their own situations. So we began by designing the room layout very similar as the apartment layout, and this served as the base for the metaphor of animals living in the transparent tanks as the residents living in this apartment without privacy and always being observed by other people. To reinforce this eerie feeling, we also designed a mini guest room inside one of the tanks with the same number and the plate as the guest spawn room. Other hints of surveillance, such as cameras, can be seen everywhere as well. We also designed a basement for this room to indicate the social class differences in this dystopian society. So for the ePad shop room, we also have many indirect control details. For example, you can see the storefront, we make it very big and shiny because we want to attract guests' attention when they leave their own room. And inside the ePad shop, there are many leading lines that guide the guests to dip into this room to observe the biggest tank. And around this biggest tank, there are also many details inside this rectangle area. You can see there are brighter light, different materials, and graffiti on the wall, and half-revealed posters and cables, all of which indicate that there is another area on the right side, the basement. And also for the animals in the tanks, we have different animations and sounds for them because we want to invite our guests to walk closely to these tanks to observe these animals, because we hope they can figure out the Easter eggs we designed, such as the QR code on the reptiles' bellies and the warning voice from the shop owner. I will pass to Joy to talk about next room.
Thank you. Like we mentioned, if you go to the back of the shop, you'll find the stairway to the basement. And on the wall, in one of the posters, you'll find the man is living inside here. So on the advertisement, you'll find him holding the product, advertising an artificial organ that you can use and drink without worry. But if you look closely, it says otherwise. You'll find him sitting in the center of the room where the light is absent, drinking over and over, demonstrating the product through live stream, and you'll notice the sound that indicating he is being detoxed again and again. And on the shelf and on the window, you'll find the product displaying almost like window shopping, similar to the streamer's room. And on the wall, you'll find them pulsating. The tissue may seem real, but the metallic wire says otherwise. In this room, he is surrounded by all kinds of monitors and TV screens that makes all of his life. He is trying to make a better life for himself, but the work and the product is keeping him from it. So it's keep worsening his health while he is trying to get out of this space. And here is the process of how we transfer our actor into the game engine. And now I will pass the mic to Pen Pen to talk about Soundscape.
Welcome to sound. So, 3 main goals for sound. First, we want to build this sort of layered atmospheric soundscape to help enrich the world building. And then second, to play with parameters to solidify the physical space in a VR setting. And then third, to see what role the sound play in direct control. So here's some quick samples of soundscape. So from this sort of damp, poorly maintained pet shop to this sort of breezy, open area that leads to a bigger, sort of run-down cityscape. So there are 78 sound sources in total. Shan is in charge of the audio implementation, and we work together to sort of finesse parameters such as spatialization, audio level, equalization. And since the moving mechanism we took in this project is sort of teleporting by certain increments, we worked on sort of smoothing out the inevitable drop in sound attenuation, but by playing with those parameters. And then indirect control. So there's a very straightforward of sound motivating players moving from area to area by music or voices in a distance, or even the AI telling you go explore other rooms. And there's also the oral reinforcement of visual indirect control or themes that might have been missed by the players. So for example, under the theme of surveillance, some of the reptiles have camera eyes, which are fairly small, and that's where sound can come in to help draw the attention.
Do not come any closer.
And that will be a quick summary for sound.
All right, so before we conclude our presentation, I want to talk about scope as well as playtest. So scope-wise, we actually did a very big scope cut up to halves. As you can see here, for our week 1 planning, we planned to have 10 rooms, 9 footages, and 400 plus assets. But by half, we already cut it into only 50% of the scope, which actually leads to a similar scope we are right here. So in the project that you just saw, we have 6 rooms, 4 live action footage, and then we cut the movement and gameplay into just movement. And in the end, we have around 270 made assets. But in total, we still have around 360 assets, but part of them are open source. So I would like to bring your attention to the 2D and 3D part of our project. We have incorporated 12 clips in total. 4 of them are live action. As you can see, we have 3 green screen footages, and then 1 of them includes the streamer's close-up. We have 2 CCTV recordings, 7 animated clips, which were made from Adobe Premiere, Powtoon, and Cynthia AI. So as I mentioned, we have utilized open source assets. If you can look at the right side, you can see plants, buildings, and some of the Coca-Cola cans. So we have used those plants from Megascan and then composed them back into the scene to make things in the tanks, the exterior vista, and then we also incorporated some of the posters, graffitis from open source assets into our project. All right, so lastly, I want to bring your attention to our playtest. We had 46 players in total. Half of them were from the ETC Public Playtest Day, and we had an open house for ETC students, faculty, staff, and also alumni. So from those playtests, we had 2 very important feedback. One of them is that the guests spend 5 to 10 seconds with the footage, which is very heartbreaking. So we did the iteration to shorten the footage loop and then added more attention grabbers so that they actually spend significantly longer time there. And the second feedback we got is that people get the dystopian society part, but not surveillance. So what we did here is we added cameras, monitors, and the miniature rooms and posters so that they confirm that they feel like being watched in our project. And that's all of the presentation. Thank you for listening. We're open for questions.
The combining the 3D footage and the 2D footage was part of what was unique about this project. This is a topic that I've watched come up again and again over like the last 30 years. So I guess I'm curious, now that you've done it, how do you feel about it? Do you feel like, oh, this is great and everybody should do it? Or do you feel like this is hard and problematic? Yeah, what's your feeling about it?
I have very mixed feelings about this. So I could talk about it in two parts. First of all, we could talk about, oh, actually, I'm going to skip this. So first of all, we can talk about how we did the filming and incorporate it into the scene. So we have to match the lighting, and matching the lighting is super difficult. As you can remember from the streamer's room, she was like pretty well lit, so that made everything easier. But with the drunk man's room, because the drunk man is in a dark environment, we had to relight him, and that makes it really hard. And the second part I want to talk about is those films take up a very big chunk of memory when we're running in VR. Because VR we still use PC VR, which means it's still running from the GPU of the computer, but our minimum requirement is graphics card 3070, which is not that low, but not that high, it's in the middle. But we have to minimize the size into 480p. 480p is not a standard size anymore. We always use 1080 and even 4K and 8K. So I would believe if VR devices get a huge improvement, then this technology can be incorporated better. But right now, with the HMD being under 2K, we do have to minimize the video size to improve the runtime performance.
It's funny, this is exactly what we said 30 years ago. It's interesting that it's still true.
So in your presentation, you talked a lot about how you use the space to sort of lead the eye. I'm really curious how you found the VR aspect affected the guest experience in comparison to your planned design. It's like, the fact that the person can look anywhere and have a lot more freedom of view.
So for the space, because in VR and we are testing on PC, it's completely different experience. For the environment design, we have to actually use the helmet ourselves to actually see what it looks like inside the VR space. Sometimes the scale and the shape and the color also reflect differently. So we have to use that. And also by using a lot of sound and also some of the animated elements in the scene, it will help to guide the viewer's experience or how we want them to explore the whole space.
Hello, everyone. We are Team Terrarium. One sec. I'm Xiao. I'm the producer.
I'm Ezra, a tech artist and programmer.
I'm Marie, a designer and artist.
I'm Nolan. I'm the UX designer and sound designer. I'm Varun. I'm one of the programmers.
And our faculty advisors are Ralph and Ricardo. Throughout the semester, we have also been working with our subject matter expert, Dr. Jennifer Silk and Veronica Zhang, to design our experience, and they have helped us a lot to incorporate some therapy techniques into our experience. Our goal is to create a mixed reality experience built on exposure therapy techniques to help people with social anxiety. Among all the challenges that we faced, there are three major ones. They are designing for mixed reality, building off therapy techniques, and designing for people with social anxiety. So why did we choose mixed reality? We think that MR creates a stronger presence of reality than VR or PC. And for our experience particularly, it really creates a feeling of like there are people around you. And we also value being able to walk and talk in the experience, and it really helped us to simulate exposure therapy. So the one major framework that we're working off of is exposure therapy. And what is exposure therapy? Exposure therapy is to put the anxious person near the source that causes anxiety without the intention to cause any danger. So the hope is to desensitize them, and hopefully they can overcome that type of anxiety. So having that as a lot of constraints to our design and makes the designing process different from making a game. And we are also designing with people with social anxiety in mind. We really want this to be a tool that's adjustable by the therapist based on different patients. So we have came a long way to come to our design pillars. Originally, we proposed three things. You may remember the experience itself, the data gathering, and the white paper. However, halfway through the experience, we realized that our experience at the time didn't have enough depth. Our data gathering pipeline was not implemented, and we still had our IRB pending. So we thought, oh, this is really out of scope. So the team came together and talked about what we really care about this project. Turns out it's the experience itself. We really want to play test a lot, we want to have interesting gameplay, and we want to have compelling storytelling. So we decided to scale down and really just focus on the experience. And with the more time that we had, we could iterate on the UI, we made some believable character behaviors, and we had a voice recognition dialogue system, and the whole experience is modular so that it can be adjusted by the therapist. Now I'm going to pass it on to Nolan.
Thank you, Xiao. Thank you, Marie. So the flow of our experience is this. The participant comes into the therapist's office, is given a head-mounted display, in this case the Quest Pro. They're asked to step outside of the room. They put on the headset and are given a short onboarding experience about some of the features. And then they're prompted that they are going to be invited to a party and asked to re-enter the room. They cross the threshold and see a room crowded with people. After a while, after they've seen the room, they'll find an object on the ground, which is a wallet in this case. They'll then be asked to self-report their level of anxiety, and then asked to go talk to different NPCs trying to return the wallet. So here are some highlights of what that looks like.
Hey, are you looking for something?
Yeah, I've lost my wallet. Have you seen it?
Is it this wallet?
Yes, that's it. Thank you so much.
So some of the UX design challenges that we had come across. We knew that we were going to be dealing with naive guests. These are patients and therapists that maybe haven't had exposure to AR or VR tech before. So we wanted to make sure that the mechanics were very, very simple. The player has no controllers in hand. The wallet, when they go to pick it up, it is just glued to their hand. We didn't want the player to have to think about button combinations or holding a grip onto the controller or and possibly dropping the wallet, because we wanted to make sure that this was a convincing experience for somebody with social anxiety. Immersion was very important. So we had to do what was called a calculated disclosure, in that we didn't want to reveal the mechanic about the wallet during the onboarding so that the player would enter the room with their task already in mind and not, you know, pay attention to the room full of people. Hence, we gave them the wallet after they had been in the room for a little bit. And based on some feedback from our SME, Dr. Silk, we wanted to simulate real small talk. At a normal party, people will have diverse reactions. Some people might be open to making new acquaintances. Other people might give you a bit of a snub. So there are a couple of different conversations throughout the experience. Some people might give you a soft rejection. And early on, something that we had received from both of our SMEs, something that's used in traditional exposure therapy, is called the Subjective Unit of Distress Scale. This is the participant self-reporting throughout the length of an exposure therapy session. The therapist will prompt them at different points. We wanted to just integrate this into the experience where the player can self-report. And to talk more about the characters, Marie.
Thank you, Nolan. So our characters, we discovered that it was much more important and also much more difficult than we expected, because in mixed reality, the characters are some of the only things that you see, right? There's no level design, because that's the pass-through. So we started off by making a decision between an abstract one-eyed character versus two eyes, and our subject matter expert said that we definitely should use two eyes to be more human. And so we started with a simple character model, which during playtesting day, playtesters told us that they actually wanted to talk to a much more realistic character to make it feel like they're talking to a real person. So we started on a realistic sculpt, but that became a bit too uncanny. So we moved on to a stylized sculpt, which Rei Yamada made, so thank you to her. And this was a bit challenging because we had to balance the stylized character with the really realistic pass-through. And some of our biggest challenges had to do with appropriately representing humans. First of all, we wanted to induce social anxiety, not fear or any other emotion. And so to do this, we have a blend shape rig on the face and a skeletal rig on the body. So combined, they make more accurate human behavior. And also with the animations, we wanted them to be diverse and realistic enough to fill the space and have it feel like a party, but not so dramatic and distracting that the player will get confused and not know what to do. And to do this, we actually have a character creator we made where you can change hair color, eye color, different outfits, and also personality traits. So you can set the personality of a character and it will determine how its behavior is generated once it's in the scene. And now I'll pass it to Varun.
Thank you, Marie. Now that you have characters in the scene, there has to be a way for the guests to communicate with the NPCs. And that is where the dialogue system comes into place. Based on our initial research and a lot of conversations with our subject matter experts, we realized that using your voice in the experience is our best bet at simulating a real-world conversation in this experience. So we implemented a dialogue system that has a voice recognizer built in. The voice recognizer, the dialogue system can be divided into two parts. The first one is recognizing voice, and as we all know, we speak in a different style with different accents, so the voice recognition had to be really, really powerful. So thanks to Oculus's voice SDK, that problem is solved. But mapping the guest speech to the dialogue was a really important and a kind of a difficult challenge because there is no built-in way in Unity to approximately match two strings. So we implemented our own algorithm, which was quite performant, and that mapped to an appropriate NPC response really, really quickly. Another important focus of the dialogue system was it to be very, very modular. Because any non-technical personnel, such as our therapists, can go into the project and add new conversations, edit the tone of the conversations, edit the length of the conversation, depending on how intense or comfortable they want to make it for the current audience. To let the guest know that their input is being recognized, we split the feedback and the visual feedback into two parts. The first one is, as you can see here, it's a 3D model of a microphone. It remains blue by default, but as soon as it starts recognizing the guest's voice, it turns green, letting them know that their voice is being recognized. And after the dialogue matching has after the dialogue matching is successful, the appropriate dialogue choice turns green, letting them know that, okay, this is the dialogue that you wanted to select. Overall, it looks like this.
I'm doing all right.
Yep. Next up, we have Ezra.
Thank you, Varun. So when we were creating this experience, we ended up designing things in a really dynamic way, and a lot of this was out of necessity due to constraints with the hardware platform, but it actually ended up enabling us to do some cool things that we didn't originally have on our roadmap. An example of this is because we don't actually have control over the space that the participant might be running our project in, we need to account for variability in room size, which is pretty standard for AR. So we can't really design this how you might for a typical level where you're placing things in a scene in Unity. Instead, we need to do it all procedurally. So using the actual walls of the space and any occluding furniture, we determine where we can spawn characters, and we do this in a way that keeps a consistent crowd density. So for example, if you have a room of a certain size and a certain crowd density and you're taking the same thing and putting it in a different room, you're now going to have a crowd that's twice as big. When we showed this to our SME, they immediately mentioned the idea of, well, what if the therapist could control this? Because we already had the system in place. Exposing our internal variable for crowd density was trivial, and it was actually really important because for some people, having a very dense crowd might actually help them get more out of the experience. Another thing that came up is when we were discussing the actual design, frequently we would get hung up over things like pacing, specific sequence, when we should be prompting the player to input SUDs. This led to developing what I call the modular event timeline system, where a non-technical user can create an event, and our entire project is actually structured out of these events and sorted in a linear order, and things like text pop-ups or conditionals for where the player should be can be adjusted or rearranged in this very simple interface that enables us to significantly increase our pace of rapid iteration and get a lot more out of our playtests. So you could fundamentally redesign our entire experience in just a couple of minutes and then get it back on a headset, and this ended up being really powerful. All right, to talk about our conclusion, Xiao.
So we're delivering the playable experience itself, and it's going to be open source, and you'll be able to find it on GitHub. We're also delivering the documentation that includes our design documentation and a post-experience interview guide, and these are written kind of under the supervision of our subject matter experts. Some of our takeaways. The first one is using new technology comes with a lot of risk. For us, we used mixed reality, and we did everything procedurally. That's more prone to bugs and may cause you more dev time, so just be aware of scope and be flexible with it. Also, don't be afraid to ask questions to your subject matter experts. Some of the questions seem kind of dumb, but it's not until we ask them those questions that we were really able to adapt our experience to fit the need of our demographic. In summary, our goal is to create a mixed reality experience built on exposure therapy techniques to help people with social anxiety. And that is our presentation. We are now open for questions.
you did a lot of exploration in this project. You went through a lot of changes and pivots, and finally came to this place where you're using mixed reality in a certain way. So when you look, I guess when you look back on all this and see where you landed, how confident do you feel that you found the best approach for using a simulation like this for social anxiety? Do you think that mixed reality is a better choice than VR? And I'm just wondering about your general thoughts about, do you think this is the solid solution going forward?
So I do think that mixed reality has been really effective in inducing social anxiety in our experience, because during playtests, there were actually a good number of people who felt really affected by it. And some people even wanted to take the headset off at some point. Yeah.
Well, I guess let me follow up. Like, why do you think mixed reality is better for this than using a pure VR approach?
I can give you an example of that. So we have designed a very important moment, which is entering the room from the hallway. While you're in the hallway, there's no characters, no NPCs. It's just what you see every day. Very mundane, but it's not until you enter the room, like you see the people, that's you kind of get that like moment of shock, and like you see the crowd, and we think that's how it is the contrast between the real world and the mixed reality world that made our experience powerful.
Great.
I have a quick question. What would you take into the future? What have you learned in doing this project that you would take into the future, even if a future project didn't involve mixed reality or social anxiety?
Yeah, I think obviously with any project, like playtesting and iteration are important, but once we realized like how flexible we needed to be, it felt like it was a lot more iterative of a process than most other projects that I've worked on, because you're kind of like tapping into something really abstract, and that just requires a lot of iteration with a lot of different people. We found like certain things that we were doing were hitting the correct marks for certain people. For example, right, we originally maybe were going to have a subtitle system, and then it came up in a couple of our discussions that part of the anxiety associated with talking to people in a public space is like, did I hear what you said correctly? And so at that point we realized we can't, or probably shouldn't, at least for this iteration of the experience, have that. And that wouldn't have come up had we not been doing playtesting and trying a lot of different things. So I think scoping more appropriately for having the time to do a lot of iteration is essential for any sort of project in this space.
All right, that's time.
Thanks.
Hello, hello. Hello and welcome to our final presentation. We are Moonlanders. This is our team. And these are our faculty advisors. Our client for this semester is Mike Hennessy from the Moonshot Museum. And firstly, I just want to give you a quick introduction to our project this semester. So as I mentioned before, we are working with the Moonshot Museum, a new space museum that's recently opened here in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. They cover topics relating to lunar exploration and travel to the moon, and they are partnered with Astrobox, another Pittsburgh-based company that has deep connections to Carnegie Mellon University, who specialize in making lunar landers and rovers. So for this semester, we were delivering 3 prototypes
that were intended to one day go into the museum. So they are specifically directed for the theater area, the clean room window area, and the habitat areas of the museum. We will also be delivering documentation for each of the prototypes. So here is the general layout of the museum. It is a one-room museum with various interactive installations in the museum area. This specifically is the theater area of the museum. This area over here is the clean room and window to the clean room where guests can view Astrobox engineers assembling the lunar landers. And finally, this is the habitat area, a seating area with some tables and some screens. Just in general, here are some design guidelines for our project. So the museum wanted us to essentially create these prototypes to not only create like fun, engaging, interactive experiences, but to also extend the length of the museum visit. And these prototypes are intended to be separated from what currently exists in the museum. And finally, I just want to reiterate that we are making prototypes, not final finished products. And we will be taking those prototypes as well as the documentation and handing them over to another team for future development. Now I want to pass on to Jojo to talk about payload packing.
So the first attraction is the payload packing, which will be installed aside from the clean room window. So the experience of the payload packing is moving crane around and grabbing the needed objects to the loading docks of the lander. The guests can choose which object to pack, but they need to pay attention to the balance of the lander. The target audience is 10 years and older, but the younger kids can either watch or play with the help of their guardians. The experience is about 5 minutes per person and allows multiple spectators. The intention of putting the payload packing near the clean room window is it echoes with the real operations inside the room, inspiring children to ask questions and learn. And here are all the payloads and are categorized into scientific and non-scientific objects based on the information from Astrobotic. Here are 3 examples of scientific instruments which will be used during lunar missions. And all 3 non-scientific objects here are actually already being taken to the space before. And the soda can here contains children's message from around the world. And in order to address the different types of the objects, so the scientific objects will be reddish color, while the non-scientific objects are blue. And here is an overview of the payload packing. So when the crane getting close to the object, the description and the mass of the object will show up, and the middle green bar represents the balance of the lander. And I'll pass to Anton.
Thank you, Jojo. So we have 3 ideas listed in our documentation on how this experience could be developed further. The first is to add a manifest which displays payloads that need to be packed and the loading requirements the guest needs to meet. Our second idea is to have a clear ending to show that the guest has successfully fulfilled the requirements of the manifest. For example, an animation showing that the lander is packed and ready to depart for the moon. Our third idea is to make the controls more intuitive and accessible for younger guests. The joystick we have used on the left can only be easily operated by right-handed guests and is quite large and has a lot of buttons. Our idea would be to have a joystick that's exclusively for moving the crane around the scene, as well as another joystick for ascending and descending the claw, and a button for grabbing and releasing objects. Our next prototype is the AR moon colony. And this is a sandbox experience intended to be interacted with like a toy, where guests build a settlement and discover how different buildings affect the state of each other. So we want to set this in the habitat area because it's a visualization of what a living room environment could be, and a board game is an activity people might complete in that area. So right now we have 3 tools the guests can use. These are the move tool, which guests can use to move a building around the scene. A copy tool enables a guest to duplicate a structure already in the scene, and remove is the deconstruction of a building. There are also astronauts and rovers moving around the scene whose numbers increase or decrease depending on the state of infrastructure. So interbuilding effects create building additions. So we want to show how buildings placed next to each other in certain combinations would affect each other, as this would inform guests about how infrastructure would need to be organized to ensure human survival. And the main points, or the most critical points of feedback we received from playtesting were guests having trouble understanding the functions of tools and observing the changes different combinations created. It also reinforced the importance of having a facilitator to answer questions the guests had about the experience and also answer questions about the prospects of life on the moon. And next, I'm going to hand you over to Cleo.
Thank you, Anton. So we made some visual changes based on the feedback we got from playtesting. As you can see on your upper right-hand side, we initially designed the greenhouse to have less glass portion to be more scientifically accurate. However, we realized that the green plant is a major factor for the guests to identify this building as a greenhouse. So we decided to prioritize the readability and make the green plant more visible, like this. And we also discovered that guests have a hard time to make the connection between the source building and the building additions they are generating onto their neighboring grid. So we add some design elements that is echoing each addition to their corresponding source buildings to make the visual connection stronger, such as we adding the radar dishes to the engineering building and the water towers to the residence building. One challenge we face is that guests not noticing the inter-building effects. To make the effects more noticeable, we implemented simple animations to when the additions first spawned. So as you can see on the screen, we exaggerated it by scaling it up and then scale it back down to our desired size when they were first appear. We also added particle effects to draw the guest's attention when changes happen. Another big challenge we face in this prototype is that the UI, the guests not noticing the UI, because guests tend to fixate it on the building and the grid they are building on and ignore other things that are happening inside the environment. So we display the information UI right above the grid to inform the guests what building they're actually interacting with. And we place our tool menu right inside the environment for multiple users to share to counter the Tilt5 UI limitation. And after playtesting, we realized that our icons for tools are not intuitive enough, so we added text to them, and the improvement to readability is significant. Next, I'm handing over to Tyron.
Thank you, Cleo. At the current stage, our game lacks a resource system, allowing players to build whatever they want on the terrain without restriction. To enhance the strategic depth of the game, we believe that the resource system is crucial. For example, the availability of resources, such as residential habitat, could determine the number of residents the colony can accommodate, while the capacity of the power grid could determine the number of structures that can be powered. By incorporating a resource system, we believe that we can create a more challenging environment that encourages players to think critically, plan strategically, and ultimately enhance the overall gaming experience. Providing clear goals and reward is crucial for such an educational game. However, at the current stage, our prototype does not provide a definitive goal. While we embrace the idea of providing clear goals to make sure that they don't get lost, we still want our players to explore and discover their unique goals and experience. One possible solution to this challenge is implementing indicators such as power efficiency level, residential satisfaction, etc. These metrics help players to establish their own goals and interests. By incorporating indicators, we believe that we can create a more guiding and reward system that caters to each individual's interests and goals. Next, I would like to introduce our third prototype, Mission Control. Mission Control is a theater-based interactive experience that's takes place in a theater area, simulating the real-world Mission Control Center. Led by facilitators, Mission Control can accommodate up to 12 guests to play simultaneously. The game starts with a rocket launch and lander detachment, setting up the stage for the adventure. Then the guests will be split into small groups to play 3 different minigames, and they are all cooperative.
mimicking the authentic procedure in real-life mission control. Working together, they will solve a puzzle game led by the facilitators to get the landing coordinate of the landers. Then the game culminates in a triumphant landing of the lander on the moon. Now I will hand to Derek to talk more about our mini games.
Thanks, Tyran. So as Tyran mentioned, the guests will split up into 3 teams that each will provide a simplified model of Astrobotic's actual mission control experience. These teams are mechanical, payloads, and communications. And we determined the makeup of these teams after our conversation with Astrobotic's engineering manager, Pete Fry. So each team will be playing a mini game that represents its real job counterpart in a playful and engaging way. I'm not going to show you a couple clips from our mini games. So Astrobotic's mechanical team is in charge of controlling the lander's thrusters as well as monitoring flight paths. So players will each be controlling one or more of the thrusters that are situated on each of the 4 sides of this 2D lander. And as a team, their goal is to guide the lander along the critical trajectory. The payloads team at Astrobotic is in charge of operation and monitoring of payloads that are mounted onto the Peregrine lander, as well as collecting incoming data. So we styled this more of like a data sorting minigame. So as the data falls down, players are in control of these rotating paddles, and their job is to sort the data into the correspondingly themed compartments. The communication team at Astrobotic uses NASA's Deep Space Network radar system to establish a line of communication from the lander to mission control. So players are in control of one or more of these radars, and their goal is to cross their beams and keep the lander within those cross beams for a certain amount of time. So to ensure a safe landing and to complete the experience, guests are asked to deliver 2 critical pieces of data. Those are the landing coordinates on the moon and a thrust vector for the lander. So they're collecting pieces of these as they go throughout their experience, and at the end are solving a puzzle together to be able to sort that data into the correct order, deliver their final answer, and land the lander, completing the experience. So there were a couple areas in mission control that we highlighted in our documentation as needing more development, but ultimately were out of scope for our product. For example, we imagined that in the theater, guests would be handed tablets, and then Air Console would be the platform used to handle the communication between the tablets and the main computer. And while we were able to conduct a couple of feasibility tests with Air Console, we felt it was out of scope to fully integrate Air Console with our experience. So speaking documentation-wise, Moonshot Museum is in talks with multiple LBE studios to take our ideas, our products from the ideas that they are into more installation-ready products. So our goal with documentation was to talk about the tech, art, and design work that we've done already, and then dive more into the tech problems that we've encountered, as well as lessons learned from playtesting. With that, we are Moonlanders, and we are delivering 3 design prototype experiences to the Moonshot Museum, as well as handoff documentation that will assist future development teams in installation and completion of these products. Thank you. Any questions?
Yeah, when you were playtesting, just wondering. Okay. When you were playtesting, wondering, did you get a chance to playtest with a lot of family groups of multiple ages? And did you notice? Did you make any observations about the conversations, the multi-generational conversations that they were having? My generation, my father and my mother's generation have different conversations about this. and I'm wondering how do I talk about the moon landing in space to my own daughter. So, what did you observe?
Yeah, so I can begin on that. So the question was, do we ever play test with like family groups and what sort of observations we had for that? So we did get the chance to play test with family groups on playtesting day. These were typically like adults with their children, as young as I believe 8 years old. So we saw adults have a variety of different responses to these. So for example, on payload packing, we saw a lot of adults step in to like help their kids essentially, like, hey, like making suggestions, hey, you should try grabbing that. Hey, like look at like the X marker, this is how you like grab it and stuff like that. We also saw adults in mission control. Essentially, they wanted to be involved with the same mini games that their kids were doing. So that's why we added in like the staggered settings so the adults could see what their kids were doing, and they were talking about that. As for in the AR moon colony, so we had siblings, I believe, try it out, and when the siblings tried out, we saw a lot of activities where they essentially were like messing with each other. They were going in like changing their buildings around and like removing them and stuff like that.
Hey, so one test of museum exhibits is not just when people have an ideal experience with them, but when they have a not ideal experience with them. So where they come up and they fiddle with something for a while and then walk away, or they bounce off an exhibit and then go to a different one. And so I'm wondering, do you also have insights from times when the things didn't work for people for whatever reason, and why, and how you can sort of work around those kinds of experiences?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the question is, do we have any experiences with people that were not ideal? So off the top of my head, I believe during playtesting one day when we were testing the mission control experience, we had some teenagers come in with younger kids. The younger kids liked it, and the teenagers, maybe because they were being paired with the younger kids, were very non-engaged, very sort of seemingly unhappy to be there. So we targeted, in response to that, I think we did modify the design of our mission control exhibits, our mission control experience slightly. So for example, in the previous mission control, the thing that they got from completing the mini games was the puzzle, and the puzzle was very simple, like too simple for older teenagers, adults. They got that and they felt disappointed that we did all that and this was all we got. So we went and created a more slightly more complex puzzle that could be enjoyed by older audiences as well.
You kind of give us some of your thoughts on next steps. I'm curious if you had a discussion with your client about how these prototypes would be used in the sort of the next steps that they're looking at.
Yeah, so the question is our thoughts about next steps and whether we had any conversations with our client about how this was going to be used. So in terms of our client, we've sent our client our documentation, and he's gone through and reviewed it. A lot of it is making sure that our documentation is clear enough that essentially if someone is not an expert in it, that they know what stuff is. So like a lot of things were like terms that we didn't think we had to define, like what a user interface is. We had to define our documentation. And other sort of next steps that we were considering are the things that we've essentially listed out in this presentation for like the things that we want to develop and add to our products, but we never got the chance to based off of time.
Hi everyone, we are Team XArt. So let me introduce our team. We have our technical artist and programmer Jiayu, our product designer Glendon, our UX designer Haiyun, UI designer Tiange, and our programmer Simon, and our fantastic instructor Mo. So let's talk about our project. Why we want XR plus art. As you know, there are a lot of artists who have a lack of getting their artwork displayed or exhibit in galleries, but we really want to let them to do that. And so we have 3 stakeholders initially. We have Erica, who is a PhD student, and she wants to do some research exploring the possibilities like with merging realities and virtual world, and also how to collaborate with the artists. And the Pop District, they want to invite more visitors to come to the location, and the local artists, they have their own benefits they want to achieve. So what we have done by the halves, we thought we can, based on these 3 stakeholders' requirements, but we noticed that we can actually expand our definition further. That means we can let all artists to do what they want in the virtual immersive gallery, and at the same time, we can give the viewers a nice experience to explore those artwork. And actually, these could support each other's experience, and so we decided to make the location broader, not only at the Pop District, and also from the alignment activities, the artists are very happy with this expansion. And so our final goal becomes that we make a virtual immersive gallery. It empowers the artists to share their artwork, and also give the viewers a very easily accessible and engaging experience. And these 2 experiences will support each other to make make all of them even better. So let's see what our final deliverable looks like. We have artist end and the viewer end, and the basic flow is artists can manage their artwork and edit and place and publish their artwork, and the viewer can easily access the app and to see their artwork. Let's see a video. What does it look like?
Thanks, Lana. So as Lana mentioned, this is our final deliverable. Actually, we have done several iteration and testing sessions to achieve our final deliverable. And in the core of our design goal, actually, this is the 2 of the main goal where we want to design and iteration. The first one is easy to access, and the second one is easy to use. By easy to access, as Lana mentioned, we are not only make the location broader that can be easily accessed by all the viewers, but also we want the artists can easily access to their audience, and the viewers can easily access to artworks. By easy to use, we want to make the platform easy to use so as to bring a more engaging experience for both artists and the viewers.
So from our previous alignment session with our artists, we noticed that they definitely want to reach out to a larger audience. So we create this community-like function, which enables the viewers to comment or like their favorite artworks. And also this will encourage the artists in return. And for both the artists and viewers, this will help them access to each other more easily and build a more engaging experience. And we just mentioned the artists are looking for opportunities to bring them to the public. So we have this information panel designed for them. This is our previous design, and they can only showcase their basic information of the art pieces. But now we are allowing them to insert a link to their art pieces or even their portfolio website, and let them decide if they want to open their artworks for sale. And we also add this age restriction function. And with all of this, we would like to help them access to each other more efficiently and properly. And for placement, because now we are moving to a broader range, and we want to get rid of the physical limitation. So now the artists are able to place their artworks anywhere instead of just beyond the surface.
So for easy to use, actually, we have done several artist alignment sessions with our artist participants, and also several internal testing feedback from ETC faculty and ETC students. And during our playtesting session, we noticed that actually the preview window part is super crucial for artists to use, since this window shows exactly what they are controlling and adjusting, and this will be exactly the exhibition look like. Also, on the other hand, the control panel is also crucial for them. Actually, when we are doing the playtesting, we found that the control panel needs to be more five-finger friendly. So here is our solution. We remap and redesign the interface and break down the control panel into different sections, so artists can control the height, rotation, and size respectively. Also, in this design, we can have a larger preview window for them to have a more engaging editing and exhibition experience. Also, the visual identity is a crucial part for bringing us an engaging experience. We will have Tengu to talk more about that.
Thank you, Glendon and Haiyun. For the visual identity, we got inspired from this marketing campaign designed for Coke Zero Sugar and designed by AKQA. And we also want to create with a unique art style, which is easy to be memorized by people. And we also want to create some gender-neutral character to align with our artist. And we want to be friendly to all kinds of groups and make them feel more involved. So based on the visual identity, I have designed some illustrations based on the different scenario, and we want to have a visual engaging experience to our users. So each of them will be a login page and the home page when there are no artwork has been uploaded. And once the artist has successfully uploaded an artwork, the congratulations page gonna show up. Here are the second part of the illustrations that will most likely to be viewed on the viewer's end. The caution page, which is the first illustration you can see here, is gonna pop up immediately when user open the app, because some of the locations has heavy traffic, such as pop-art district. And we want to remind users to pay attention to the surroundings. And then the transition page gonna show up and showing the information saying floor scanning. Then I'm going to pass to Simon and Jiayu to talk more about technology exploration.
Thank you, Tiange. So in order to support the goal of creating easily accessible and engaging experience, we need this complicated system. This includes the authentication, AR system, geolocation system, network system, and the command system. First, the user authentication. User authentication is used to verify the identity of the user to contribute to a more organized and easy-to-use platform. And we have different approach for two of our users. For artists who want to contribute to our AR museum platform, user authentication is essential to protect their intellectual property rights, manage their artwork, and create an artist community so that they can benefit from. And for viewers who simply want to explore the AR museum, we do not require an account registered for using. Viewers will only need to download our app and press the viewer button, and they can see the artworks around them. And next, AR system. AR system is the core of our project, enabling artists and our visitors to view the artworks with their device and interact with them. So we use Google AR Core to support our platform. This is highly reliable and customizable, and we can build our wonderful features upon them because it is highly reliable. And next, one often asked question about our project is, how accurate is the positioning, and what if the GPS signal is weak? Actually, in our project, we are using the technology of VPS to enhance the GPS performance. It is supported by Google and use SOTA machine learning techniques to enhance the GPS performance. This will greatly reduce the drifting and increase the accuracy to about 1 meter. So here's our geolocation system. It is used to track where you are and where the artworks are. It has high accuracy, as I mentioned, and it has more freedom because there are no fidelity needed so that we don't do changes on the environment. This will empower creativity for both artists and viewers. Next, Jiayu will introduce the rest of the systems.
So networking. Networking is about how did you upload your artwork into the system and how to everybody knows it. So talking about uploading, for every artist who upload an artwork, there are going to be 2 files. First is a description files about who you are, what's your artwork, and where it locates. And another thing definitely is about your artworks. Which could be like 3D assets like FBX, or like 2D assets like JPEG or like PNG. So once you have uploaded something, we have a syncing system. We call it as a lazy sync. The lazy sync means that you only sync the files when you have to. Like whenever somebody uploaded a change on this file system, like we have an observer who detects this change, and it will trigger others ends, like no matter it's viewer ends or artist ends, to sync the data, to check whether you have this change or not. If you don't have it, the system will automatically download it for you. So after we download the descriptions, we have to sync the art assets from the cloud storage. So from the description, there's an address describing your art assets. It will download it to your memory and load the memory into your runtimes applications. And network system is almost the same, but it's not lazy synced, but in real time. So which means that it was synced in every frames. We designed for 2 concerns, like common systems are more lightweighted because just comments, just documents, and also it is more frequently updated. So within these 2 ways, we can easily to make everything up to date in the minimal cost. Next, we have Nina to introduce challenges. Thanks.
Thank you, Jiayu and Simon. So as we already introduced, we have 3 stakeholders to consider their requirements, and we also designed a very complicated system. All we want to do is to make the application easy to access and easy to use, and we want to empower the artists and the viewers all have a nice experience. So we faced a lot of challenges implementing this because there are a lot of features we want to implement, and we have to prioritize the tasks, and we have to do the trade-off, like what we could do and what we cannot. So we have learned a lot from this, and also how to be sure everyone is on the same page, not only knowing each other is doing, but understand what we expect from each other. So we really learned from this project a lot. And to summarize, we made an application which has a artist and a viewer end. We made this application easy to access and easy to use. And so we satisfied our 3 stakeholders. We'll pass this application to the pop district of the pop district part, and also we're providing the deliverable to Erica for her research to interview more artists she is collaborating with. And this is Team XR, and thank you for your attention, and we are open to questions.
Yeah, you showed some nice videos both in the lawn next to the ETC and on CMU's lawn. Those are nice open spaces, and so it worked well. Can you talk about how things might be different inside the pop district on the city streets? And did you do any testing there?
Yeah, so we definitely have several rounds of the artist alignment session, and also especially the final round with the artist we were testing at the pop district. Actually, one of our observations is that for the pop district, actually, so the artists are placing their artwork like smaller size actually than the open space, and for the a more like a busy street, it is more for us to design, since the caution page and also several of the details page, actually we were designing based on the iteration and feedback on the pop district. And actually for artists, for the future, actually we will have the product pass to Erica and pass to pop district, and the 3 artist participants will have embedded their artwork at pop district. And we will also have the QR code to embed on the wall of the pop district that for viewers and they can download and see the artworks at pop district. Yeah, so we will definitely follow up with the next development and implementation.
I'll just shout it out. How are you handling content moderation, both for what artists are posting and what viewers may be commenting?
Yeah, that is a great question. The question about content regulation and also moderation, right? So actually for, this is also one of the feedback from our artist participants. They are concerning about the cyberbullying or some bad words can happen in the comments, or some improper image or artworks can be placed in the virtual gallery. But right now we are currently, because right now the scope is relatively smaller, and we are designing this system only for the pop district and for several artist participants. And the question is great. We have put that in the documentation as we have the invitation code system for artists, and also only certificated artists can place their artwork in the virtual gallery. We have documented several rules for placing the art pieces, such as how closely they can put the art pieces in the same space, and also how to set up the colliders for them to place side by side and do not disturb each other. So we have documented this thing, and also this can be a great resource for Erica and for future virtual galleries.
All right, that's time.
Thank you.
All right, congratulations to all the team. We're over halfway. Back to go chat. Go chat. Oh, hey.